Hello, fellow compatriots, to episode 2 of Journey into Drifts. And today we're going to be talking about the guidelines of making a mock and how those guidelines are basically flawed. And today I have with me TropiNui.
Hello.
Hello, and if you want to go ahead and check her out, be sure to go to her Twitter, link in the description below. But yeah, let's go right into it. To start off with, I want to talk about like the strong expectations of a modernized aesthetic, because it's more so like an art style. It's more so of an art style that people are putting on a pedestal because of the, and it tends to be blurred with build, because I tend to feel like art style and build tend to get mixed when you try to go with a modernistic approach. At least with
I
me.
think I noticed that's like kind of like a thing where I might have an idea on why it's become the strong expectation because it's like when you get so ingrained into a certain aesthetic appeal and you usually tend to go following that aesthetic because it's like it's a comfort area,
It.
and when you see
Mm-hmm.
things outside of that comfort area, it's like, oh my god, what is that? What are those? And you have that sort of, it's kind of like you want to continue that because you know that people like that, and you want to
Mm-hmm.
continue that because people like it, but it means you kind of start to get repetitive, and then
Yeah,
you start
and you're
uh,
limiting yourself because of that, because if you don't, because like that new way of building is basically the new norm, is the expectation. And when you try to break the mold to try to make something new, you tend to be looked down upon, and it makes you go like, oh, that is a bad mock because you are doing a completely different art style than the one that you are aiming for, that you're supposed to build like.
basically you're working at it with a standard that we aren't working with. You're
Mm-hmm.
doing something outside. You're basically being a punk. You're being a mock punk. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of comes with along with also the ideas like, and people start to go into this style thinking, oh, it's super popular and people really like it, and I want to be liked and popular, so I will start to adopt this style, and thus they lose their own voice. It's kind of like how, from an artistic speaking point, uh when a lot of people start drawing, they kind of start they go towards anime because anime is like cool and hip and popular, and you have these people who are trying to draw humans, but the humans don't quite look right because they don't understand all the building blocks that go into making really good, indeed, nice looking artwork. They're focused on, and because they're now so ingrained in it, it's hard to get out of. That's number
Mm-hmm.
one. It's hard to break those habits. It's hard for them
I
to get
would
really anywhere.
say that like it's hard to get any new flavor out of like that art style because you're limited to it.
Yeah,
Because when you are like removing yourself from variety, and sure there is some
variety.
variety when you're trying to do it in that style by combining other styles to the said style, but that's like trying to put peanut butter in everything. Eventually you're going to get tired of the taste and you're just going to be like, oh, well, this combination is nice, I like that. And that's rather sad, that it's come to that
Yeah,
point.
it it's basically the whole modernistic aesthetic. Though it looks nice, it has a very beautiful appeal. It's very cookie cutter. So because you have all these people kind of looking similar to each other, they think that's the normal. That's what's to be expected of everyone. This is how the people should dress. This is how the people should present themselves. And the moment someone presents themselves outside of that in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
even however slight, like for example, you have a lot of people who rely almost excessively on CCBS, And then you get a person who is combining both CCBS and system, or CCBS and old Technic in a very unique manner. They start to eyeball it like, it looks weird, it looks greebly, and they don't really take into consideration that maybe that's just what the person was looking for. That's what they wanted to go for in appearance, and it looks very nice to
Hmm.
them. Uh, but because how these models are like super smooth, yet I can see like they are lacking a flavor and build, because it's like it's almost samey. You start to forget, like I don't know the difference between this artist and that artist unless I follow that artist in particular, or those two different
Exactly.
artists in particular.
Yeah, it
But you
starts
see this,
looking. Yeah, it starts looking like as if the same artist made it. Because it's everybody's copying each other in
and
a
I see
sense.
this in the art community too. Outside of even Bionicle and Lego, the fandom, I start to see this in artists too, where it's like I follow like two, three different artists, and I'm starting to because their art styles are so similar to each other. They have like the same goofy proportions and the teeth and all this sort of things involved with the characters that they like to draw. It's like, wait a minute, didn't I? Who is this? Who's drawing this now? It's like you start to lose sight of who's who. It's kind of, they lost their voices. They're
Hmm.
kind of just imitating each other because it looks cool. And it's like, no, focus on yourself. Focus on what you want to present.
Yeah. But with that also comes with the viewpoint of, because you're not really following the new normality that has been set up with like what makes a good mock from a bad mock, you doing a different art style is deemed as bad, because it doesn't look right or like it's rather wrong, you know. And there
Yeah,
shouldn't be
it's
a
like when
wrong
you,
way of building, even though there
yeah.
can be wrong ways of building. I
Oh,
think,
yes, the illegal connections.
yes, illegal connections and stuff like that. But I think we should really focus on like what exactly makes a bad mock, since people who keep saying like, okay, this doesn't fit what other people are doing, so therefore it's not a good mock, it's a bad mock. So
Like,
what really
I,
does make a bad mock then?
yeah, I mean, because like, uh, because you could have things where it's like, uh, say for example, there's like a character who has a very, very set, you stay within a few colors, like red, black, and silver.
Hmm.
You stay within those colors, those set colors, and it looks pretty good. You got what they, they, the people who are very, very fond of those terms, the color blocking. You got the color blocking on point, or even if you don't have the color blocking on point, and it's kind of just scattered about the character, it's, you'll still get people saying, well, the color blocking isn't right. And it's like, according to whom? I mean, like for example, this let's say this
Oh, like the
metaphor.
cities, for example, that was in that we
Mm-hmm.
have over here. Like, there's so many colors in this, like so many
Mm-hmm.
colors in the little city. But like that's still accepted as a good mock, even even though it's like so many different colors, and
I mean, rainbows are beautiful, but
yeah, rainbows
I
are
guess
beautiful.
because it's done in a flow. Like I can see what they did with how they presented it on the plate. Or just say it's on the plate. It's like we have. It's not just, oh, the reds are next to the blues and the greens are over there with the purples. It's like, no, it's like a very smooth, gradual flow from one end of the color spectrum to the other end of the color spectrum, and that's what makes it very, very appealing. With the center piece is that white to kind of just help accent and offset everything.
Yeah,
It it's the beautiful piece. I wouldn't
yeah.
quite call it a Bionicle piece, but it's beautiful. I mean, I guess
Yeah, it
because it
is
has
beautiful, but
little.
it was featured in a Bionicle contest, so it,
I see some CCBS and some Borak pieces there. I guess that counts.
yeah, definitely a Bionicle mock, guys. Definitely a Bionicle mock. We use Bionicle
Uh,
pieces.
no disclaimer. We are a disclaimer. We are not at all dissing these artists. They are masters at their craft.
Yeah.
We're just discussing what seems to be a very prevalent problem.
Yeah, more so in the aspect of like expression of art styles, and stuff like that within like making Bionicle mocks and so forth. Even though like that is a beautiful piece and should be like maybe up there in the Lego brick house, you know, because I wouldn't be surprised seeing it up in there, because of how well it's made. But
Oh yeah,
um, like
throw that, blow that up to a bigger scale and throw that on Lego Ideas. You probably get a few
yeah,
votes. That little city thing alone would definitely get some attention. Um, but going on to the topic, the back to the metaphorical, the
what makes a
theoretical
bad
model we're
mock?
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I don't think it's quite fair to the artists themselves to say, "Hey, no, you can't have these little different colors scattered all over the place." It's like, but that it looks okay to me because
yeah,
that's a huge part of it is it's subjective.
e-
It's incredibly subjective.
exactly.
Like,
Like you can have
um,
like a good example is what if you make like a Matoran mock, but he is a painter and he likes to paint
mhm.
sporadically. He's going to be covered in all sorts of colors, all splotched over and stuff like that. And then you go ahead and showcase this mock that you made, who is clearly a painter, and people say, "Oh, that is as terrible coloring. Is that a work in progress?" You
And
know,
it's like that's like no one really takes that into consideration. Just like, or if they do, it's like, okay, it's not how you would build it. Fair enough. I think that's kind of something that people don't really grasp a lot is that they think they're looking at it like how they would build it. And it's
uh-huh.
like, okay, fair enough. I wouldn't build something like how you build something, and you wouldn't build something like how I build something.
Yeah,
A fine example of that would be how you have built a Matoran based off of my artwork, and how I've built a Matoran based off of my artwork, or rather, how that worked. Because it's still a Matoran. It's still based on this concept of what I've drawn, but translated two different ways, and they're still both valid.
yeah,
Uh, and granted, they
and
both have their own flaws, given they're
mhm,
very small models, but it's like
yeah,
they're
it's
not
true.
bad.
But that's what happens when you work at that scale. But I think where we're getting at here is more so of the fact that of just people just being nice to each other, basically at that point. Just being like have constructive criticism if there's like something you don't like.
Yeah.
Be constructive with your points and critiques. You don't be like start bashing on the other builder and make them feel like inferior in comparison to you.
Or even worse, it's not just make them feel inferior. It's more like it's like a case of oh, make them dejected and feel bad for basically expressing themselves or expressing something, an idea they had in their head, and it's like, okay, how do I get this out on paper, essentially? And okay, things aren't going to be supreme and excellent. They're your masterpiece in the first go. I mean, I've taken my mocks multiple times and just kind of filled with them, refined. I have a mock that I have. The initial concept was to combine Waspix and Batil, and the initial concept wasn't great. But after a bit, I kind of just took some parts and changed them around, and he's more how I think you know, the best example of himself. I think
Yeah,
there's some pieces he still should
and
get more out.
and
But
if with that discussion, another example would be the old Tahu mock that I have done in the past, back in 2016, and the revamp I have done as of recently, which is a complete overhaul. But you can
mhm.
see like the massive changes that I've done, through the progression. I fixed proportions, I fixed with the colors, there's a lot of detail, and so forth, but it still harkens back to old Bionicle, but it's not in like the pistony like Toyamada build, but more so of like the video game models from Bionicle the game from the GameCube, you know.
And what's exceptionally nice about what's nice about that is that it combines a lot of the concepts everyone wants and loves in their models. Sometimes it's like
Mhm.
it has the same appeal as the gear pieces, the gear function. It also has the appeal of the action poses that people really love in the later designs for the toys. And um,
Another thing
I guess.
is displayability, because that is like
Mhm.
another factor as well that you had to consider when you go ahead and make a mock. You know, how well does it display, you know, and what accessories does it come with to achieve like your particular taste and how you want to display that figure, you know.
Mhm.
But you know, but how did we exactly like got to this point, you know, of like these guidelines, you know, and I really want to go ahead and talk about how they really set in motion, because I think that is an important thing to talk about, and how we actually got to this point. And it started right when Bionicle G1 ended, you know, and there was like a lack of new pieces, you know.
Mhm.
And when you had a lack of pieces to use, you know, you tried to branch off into other mediums. And at the time, that was Hero Factory. So people were trying to put CCBS pieces into their Bionicle mocks, trying to work with them, try to make some new styles and what have you. Um, and then like once they felt like CCBS was rather limiting in what they can do with it, they then branched into system. Um, and and that's the thing. It's like CCBS is not limiting at all. It's just as free form um, as system. You know, in the sense that like the best we have seen on what you can do with CCBS in terms of official sets would have to be the buildable figures, Star Wars, General Grievous, and Witch Doctor from Hero Factory. Those two are by far one of the best CCBS built figures you would ever see. You know, and you could probably go even more better than that in terms of builds, but there is a lot of possibility with that build. But people were getting tired of using the same pieces, which may stem from the fact, now that I'm talking about it, I think it more so stems to the fact because when Bionicle was around, G1, every single year you would get a new piece. Every single year. And I think that stuck
Whereas
with
with
us.
uh, whereas with Hero Factory and then later on Bionicle G2, we were basically seeing, oh, these are just recolors of older pieces, and it's like, well, what can we really do with this? Like, you get tons of shells, and they get only so many bones and all that, and you're kind of puzzling and looking at it. I was like, okay, what do we do with this?
Yeah, because it's a different way of building. It's just like system, you know, because of like let's say you just get your regular two by four Lego brick. You know, they come with
Mhm.
all sorts of different colors. Yeah, people make insane statues out of those things. Like there are a few popular Lego designers that made that one Lego statue that was all yellow, that was pulling his chest open as the yellow pieces were coming out of the chest cavity. I think you've seen that one, have you?
I don't think I have.
I gotta. I'll go ahead and bring that up.
But
Lego.
I have seen, because I had a book from a long time ago on just the history of Lego in general,
Okay.
and it showcased a lot of their sculptures. And these are actual sculptures, like, I think it talked about the Legoland sculptures, which were made out of Lego, like genuine Lego bricks to build these gargantuan pieces, like the giraffe, bending down to just be, take a sippy sip, or the policeman on his beat. You know, all these really cool statues that were just purely Lego, and that was perhaps the greatest pleasure to behold. And then you get the promotional pieces that Lego has done for various and sundry movies. Like, you have uh, that model for Zootopia that was just absolutely demolished. And
Hmm.
and what's funny is that even in its demolishment, its destruction, it was still beauty. It was still work, a piece of artwork,
Yeah.
which is hilarious and very poetic. And then
Yeah.
you have, like, I think for Jurassic World, I'm not sure if it was number one or number two, but you had a figure statue of Blue up on a car, and I think the car was might have been real, or the car was also built out of Lego. Point is, it was phenomenal.
Yeah. It was, and you know what, and CCBS has probably has that potential. That diversity for like a buildable figure system. Because one, it's easier for Lego to produce, because they don't have to keep producing new molds every single year like Bionicle used to do. And two, it promotes like trying to be more creative with it. And that's why like I feel that why the new system, like the new guidelines that we have, with it has to, Bionicle Mox has to have this look, occurred is because we gotten so used to of using those parts, all because it stemmed from our need and obsession of new molds every single time when we go ahead and make a mock. Because we always want to use the latest molds, the latest pieces.
Because, to truth be told, the classic Bionicle art style, the classic Bionicle theme, aesthetic and style, uh, the 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 uh, the technique, and then later on the construction aesthetic, that was all over the place because but Lego was just basically changing it up every year.
Hmm.
As they introduced something new. Like, first you had the Toamata, which were very, very simplistic. Well,
Yeah.
even before that, you had the Throwbots, and then you went from the Throwbots to
Robo
the Skull,
Riders.
the Robo Riders, yeah, the Skull, and then the Skull dudes of the island, or whatever it was called back then.
Oh, Boneheads of Voodoo Island. Yes.
Yeah,
Which.
Boneheads of Voodoo Island.
Hmm.
And then from there on, you get to the actual Mata builds, and then you have these gargantuan Rahi, and uh, it had its own aesthetic. It was very technic in its aesthetic. Then we started to get like a little bit more smoothness in concept and appearance, but with the addition of the Nuva builds and the Borok shields and pieces and all that.
Hmm.
And then we segued into Metru, and we started to get more smooth pieces. It was starting to get more, it was coming more into itself. They were really starting to grasp a hold of what they wanted to show for an aesthetic when it came to Bionicle, and that became
Yeah.
the construction aesthetic. It wasn't strictly technic, but it wasn't strictly what would later become CCBS way down the line.
Yeah.
it had it had that greeble, but it also had a smoothness to it. Like, for example, you had things like Prydac, and you have the more organic models like, and like Takadox and
And
Nocturne.
yeah, and the Bararaki, were recycling parts from all the previous years, yet they were still introducing new parts. You know.
And it had its own aesthetic that didn't, because when you had the Ignika and the Paraka, they were unique because it's like, what in Matanui's name is this? This is crazy. Look at that dude. He got glowing eyes, and that guy, he's got a rubber mask. And we're not going to discuss about the rubber masks and that disaster.
Oh
But
yeah.
they're kind of they kind of had a very similar aesthetic,
Hmm.
and it kind of like, I don't really like these pancake toa, and then there's these Skaki, which are like kind of cool. They got the cool arm mechanic. They got weapons. Like, oh, look at that cool weapon. You know?
Yeah.
And then you got into Marinui, and that was like, hi, you're getting tired of all these very samey builds. Surprise! Here are builds that are nothing alike from each to each other, and it kind of like, it was like a breath of fresh air. I think Marinui that whole year was a pretty solid year. I think that's why
It,
so many people love it so much, is
yeah.
because it was like, surprise.
And then with 2008, it brought in like vehicles galore, gear functions and all that. But people were like, the Anika build again. We just had this last year, and because that was the third time in a whirlwind, to make it on top of that, you had even more fragile joints, you had the Avma torn build, you know,
Yeah,
and I think,
unfortunate.
yeah, that's, and I think the reason why they went like cheap with the Matoran, because I guess they wanted to encapsulate the Mictoran in a way, but like have it updated and have some more articulation kind of thing, but also so that they can focus more engineering on all the other sets that they were doing at the time, which is
I I think with when they were really working on that, it it was clever in its own way. It just didn't quite,
land right.
yeah, it kind of landed on its ankle, and it's like, ah.
Yeah, and
uh
then this ankle snapped as line
because it was
pieces
made of
just
lime
sprung.
joint.
Yeah.
No, lime joint strike again.
Yeah,
uh
but yeah,
but
to go back to like the mocking community in general, like that in essence, that familiarity with those pieces, getting in them every single year, has kind of like led to the need of going to system because guess what? Lego keeps making new bricks all the time. So that's like their cash grab now. That's like their need and obsession that they go towards whenever it comes to making a Bionicle mock. They go like, oh, they got these new pieces. Let's go ahead and utilize that. You know.
and while that's fine, if that's what you like to do, because again, mocking is an expression of oneself, they're your own art style, and maybe further on they
Yeah.
might graduate entirely from saying, oh, this is a Bionicle mock, to just saying, behold my Lego sculpture. Because
Yeah.
I think that's what they're really going for towards. I like, I think it's pretty cool that they're taking, when you have artists who take Bionicle and kind of make their own thing, like, their own
Yeah.
custom worlds and stuff
Yeah.
that don't really even have anything to do with Bionicle, but they're still telling their own story with the parts they have, so they don't really have to rely on what is set in canon and stuff, because it's their own story. They're just
Yeah,
using
exactly.
these toys to
But
express that.
but when you go ahead and make it in a way where it's like, oh, everybody has to do it this way, that's when it becomes an issue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
because I think, and I think we put a lot of kind of pressure on people who are just not, let's all be honest. We have Marcus who are not exactly great. We have some Marcus who are wanting to become Marcus, but they don't have the funds to get all the cool pieces and stuff. You know, uh, or they just are just doing it to have fun, and they're not entirely worried about if they have the correct parts or not.
Yeah.
Because you see pretty cool MOCs based off of utilizing. That's a thing I kind of wanted to discuss a bit is like the MOCs that utilize kind of like the canon builds, like someone made a Kitongu MOC, but it's not quite Kitongu, but it's like it's a member of Kitongu's race.
Yeah.
Or you want to make yourself a Makuta. Now Makuta can be a little bit more wild and varied, or you want to make a Matorn, you want to make a Vortex or a Steltian Brute or what have you, or even make your own custom Skakti or Steltian Noble, like the Sidorak species.
Yeah.
Like, after a bit, there's only so many ways you can really twist it before it's like let's be honest, there's only so many connections, there's only so many anything you can really do with some of the parts you're given or you have on
Yeah.
hand. So a little
But
creativity, or even colors for that matter. Like there are some pieces that only ever came in that color,
yeah,
and
only
it's
in
like,
like one set.
ooh,
Like a good example is maybe Zactan, or if you want to also put in uh Onuwa as
mm-hmm.
another example. Even though he showed up two times, one as a Hordika and one as a Toa, but like that's the only time that color showed up.
That Metru Brown.
Yeah, that Metro Brown. Exactly. So
Well, actually, I think it showed up like once more in Avac,
oh yeah, I
but that
kind of
was the last time because then they swapped over from browns because well, they had their own reasons. I guess brown wasn't really a selling color. I don't know.
yeah, it wasn't selling well apparently, but so pretty much I would say like since this is like basically like the new like setting, the new norm that like hey, we have to like try to build in this modernistic style, what and since we did talk about like how we basically how this community came to this point, where we have this obsession of need. What do you think it would take for the Bionicle community to diverge in different art styles and media? When trying to make a Bionicle mock without relying so heavily on a modernistic art style combined with other art styles, or rather, because you don't need a lot of pieces to go ahead and make a mock, uh, because you have like, or even if you don't afford any like Bionicle pieces in general, you can still make it in stud.io or LDD. So the
Yeah.
question really is, would take what would it take for the community to diverge in these different art styles, instead of like trying to repeat
I
the same thing?
I think really what um I think it's because of as I was stating the kind of cookie cutter almost type thing. It's like if more parts of a different style started to come in, like because people really more focused on what's available to them. Because when you think about it, it is a thing of availability because the old Bionicle, the old construction parts, they're starting to dwindle. They're
Yeah,
starting to go away. You still have Technic, and you still have, you know, so they're going to go for what is most readily available so that they can get on pretty much en masse
yeah.
to really to just start to make what they are wanting to make.
Mhm.
Like, so I think if we were to get something along the similar lines of, in that kind of building method, construction, CCBS, something like that, that uses the similar system, we probably would start to see a bit more of an adjustment to what's going on. Like, obviously, people are going to generally stay clear of the kind of obvious pieces and parts. Like some people will veer clear of the Star Wars buildable figureheads and other figureheads like that. Though I've seen some people who've taken those figureheads, like the Ray head with the all wrapped up in a sand uh
Oh,
smock or whatever it's called,
oh yeah,
uh,
I seen that.
where the person took it and turned it upside down and put it up against this little cart they had, the Lego cart, and they treated it like it was a wrapped up Voss or something. And like that was a pretty good take. Someone else took another character I forgot the name of because I don't keep track of Star Wars.
I
They
know.
put like a visor over the character's head, and it was like a new thing entirely. It's like that's cool.
Yeah. Heck, you can even bring in like freaking Obi-Wan Kenobi's head being used as the head for an astronaut in one of the recent Bionicle MOCs in BioCup 2020. You know, that is another good example right there. But I think that we are starting to have that, may actually have that second wind of variation of different art styles, because I just realized we do have 3D printed parts that we're producing our own pieces now.
Yes. To quickly round off what I was stating, people will try and veer away from the very, very blatant art, uh, kind of already claimed and stylized pieces. Kind of like how a lot of people don't quite make Hordika mocks a lot or Skakti mocks a lot because there's only so many colors you can get these heads in. So if you like make an Oniwa for an make a Hordika using Oniwa's head, you're just gonna be told, "Oh, nice Oniwa," and it's like, no, this is a different character entirely. I just had to use this head because the only other alternative is um, make a to paint it, or as you were stating with the 3D modeling, to make a custom head. Uh, so I think if we brought in more parts, which again the 3D modeling and printing is doing, once we start to get the hang of what we're doing with the 3D modeling, because you know the proper dimension for ball joints and uh, the sockets,
Yeah,
then we probably are going to start getting somewhere with getting more interesting and creative uh, armor pieces and uh, bones and things that we want to see.
yeah,
And also masks, like individuals such as King K, Red Star Studios, whatever it's called,
yeah.
Galva. They're
Mm-hmm.
bringing to the community, and King Sidorak, I can't forget him.
Yeah, you can't.
He's they've all brought to the scene new models. They've brought new masks, new bones, new armor pieces. It's honestly it's beautiful to watch because as a community we are being creative even though we are looking at dwindling resources.
Yeah,
We're just saying, okay, let's do something with this. And uh because we're starting to get that influx of 3D modelers becoming more prevalent now that we know what we're doing, and we know the dimensions to work with. There are groups dedicated to 3D modeling. In fact, uh, once we get that all sorted and stowed away, I think we're going to start to see influx of a refreshment of what is considered the modern aesthetic. The because people are going to be like, okay, we now have the parts. When and they'll start to branch off again. Heck, some of these artists might actually become 3D modelers themselves. Like, for example, Galva, he makes mocks and uh, he also 3D models, as I said prior.
yeah,
And for a particular contest last year, he actually made the mock and then made the claws and mask to go with his mock. So it's really cool to watch. Like, haha, I will make the finishing touches. Behold, magic.
Yeah.
And
And I think, if as this progression goes, with making our own parts, you know, Bionicle is going to become like something new, almost really like an unrecognizable, godly looking thing, once we go to the end of this road, if we continue going this path when it comes to producing our own parts, because my goodness, we're going to be making possibly the most majestic looking pieces, most
and
majestic looking mocks in general.
And another thing is because we're going to be branching off with 3D printed pieces, we're going to be branching off if Lego themselves starts to introduce new parts, which I think they're starting to do because Lego has a new uh, they have a new thing going on, which is the Monkey Kid, uh,
Oh yeah, which is a good line.
and then Lego willing, they'll probably in the future. You know, I'm not putting my money on it, but I do think they might at least put more buildable figures out for, well, just because
Yeah,
it is a valid form, and it may not be Bionicle. This is true, but it will still be introducing new pieces because I think some of the new things involved, like you have the dragons for like the Harry Potter sets. You have those really weird thunderbirds and weird crazy creatures that the one particular um, fantastical beasts. There's some people who use those heads for their mocks. There's some people who use Kaima. Kaima is a wonderful example because Kaima also introduced different heads. They introduced claw, all kinds of cool colors and stuff, and it was pretty okay. I never got into it myself, but it was a good example. And
yeah,
um, even Ninjago itself is bringing in like because I think those dragon heads that kind of pop up occasionally, I think those themselves are technically speaking, they're compatible with Bionicle, the construction, the CCBS, the Technic. I think they're compatible with that. So some people use those as like heads and ends of attacking arms and stuff like that. Really cool stuff. Or
yeah,
Rahi, animals,
yeah,
and that's really cool and super creative, and I appreciate every second of it. Uh,
yeah,
and so I think yeah, if the trend of people making 3D models continues. Yes, it won't. Bionicle will not be the same Bionicle it was in the past, but that just happens.
yeah. It's
Because
gonna
we're
evolve,
yeah.
yeah, that's what happened. But I think we covered everything. So for
Hmm.
this conversation, so I'll go. So thank you everybody for staying this long and listening in to this discussion, especially about these important topics. And like always, if you want to watch videos a week early in advance, I highly recommend you check out my Patreon. Or if you want to go ahead and contact me, I have all sorts of social media, all linked in the description down below. So be sure to check that out as well. But anyways, that'll be all for now. Thank you for joining me, Tropi.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. Again, you want to go ahead and check her out. Be sure to go to her Twitter, link in the description down below. Anyways, like always, see you all next time. Bye guys.
Cheers.